Hi guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So we are finally here, we are finally reviewing the Falconetti gunners. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? It took me ages to get them leveled up, and then in all honesty, I don't really get on very well with them. So I've had a bit of a hard time trying to sort of figure out a playstyle that works for me, so it's taken me quite a long time to sort of get any sort of half decent footage on them that I'm really kind of happy with, and to some extent, we still haven't. They are fundamentally a good unit, and I think we can break down their usefulness into a few different parts. Firstly, I would say in territory wars they're very useful and I think they get used a lot, and I can understand why. I'm not really a territory war player, not anymore, and so we're not really covering that in this video. So what I'm talking about them really is in sort of random siege matches, and that's kind of really what I'm referring to them. So kind of they play differently in territory war, have much more use there. The biggest problem with them is that they're pretty much universally hated by everyone and their mum. You know, they just get hunted by heroes across the board. If anyone sees you with a unit of Falconettis, they will gladly throw their hero's life away to jump on them and try and kill a few of them. Everyone does it, we all hate them, and we all try and kill them, and it makes it very hard to keep them alive. They don't have a particularly large amount of hit points, 5,700 and pretty mediocre defensive stats, so it doesn't take much damage from an enemy hero to kill them, and so many of my games have just been cut short by enemy heroes or enemy units getting amongst them. They are a slow unit, they only have a speed of 3.5, so you can't really escape, and can be pretty brutal. They're also pretty vulnerable to enemy range, including enemy ranged heroes who will more than happily, stick an arrow through your face with them, kill them pretty quickly that way as well. So that's probably their biggest problem, quite challenging to keep alive. Then I think the second biggest problem for me is getting the right placement with them, getting them in the right position where they can get a clean shot into a good cluster of enemy units. These guys are really about shooting into the crowd rather than trying to hit individual models. They're not that accurate, but when you can shoot into a large cluster of enemies, that's when they're really effective. And I think they work in that capacity both offensively and defensively. Hopefully we'll have a look at a couple of clips today, one on the attack and one on the defense, and you'll kind of get to see what I mean when I say, how they can kind of work in both capacities. But they share the same sort of problems on both, of sort of getting hunted down. In terms of doctrine-wise, obviously just the increased piercing defense doctrine you get with them, really worth it. Well, probably for a little bit of range defense. What else are you going to put on them? The 25% accuracy one, definitely well worth having. Other than that, just a little bit of knock-up of blunt damage and blunt AP. Kind of a bit pointless when you consider what their blunt AP is already at. Way over 5,000, it's ridiculous. Gonna really hard hit anything it hits, from an Iron Reaper down to a Surf, and the damage on them is pretty intense. So there's still a 10 stack unit, so that's 10 cannonballs, and it doesn't stop on the first unit it hits, it travels through, so it hits multiple units in one. Other than that, what's the unit kit cost like? Not too bad at 10,000 per unit kit. They don't really seem to lose very many. I think it's a little bit like the flamethrowers, because they're a small stack unit, that doesn't seem to quite affect their kit loss in quite the same way. So they're actually relatively cheap to run for a tier 5 unit. And yeah, I think that's all we'll say on them. Let's hop into a battle, see how we've been getting on, and see what we can do with these mobile cannons. So we kick things off on Riverland's Castle Siege. Always a fairly challenging map, even without having to try and get your Falcos positioned. The enemy, or if you're the defending team, you're always going to get set up in that gateway. And it makes an untreppable, very challenging sort of hard point, which to root the enemy out of there is extremely difficult, because inevitably they have flames, falcos and shields blocking both ends, which makes it really, really hard to push, because they always often stack quite a few units of Pavese in the middle, and so as soon as you push around the corner, and you can see like how many Pavese bolts are coming flying around this corner, it makes it really difficult to get round there. Because by the time you get round, half your unit's dead, and then they'll just push into you with the shield unit and finish off what's left. Unless you can get that really sort of unified push going, it can be very difficult. But this is why I brought my Falcos in this part of the map, because if we can get a bit of a push going, if we can get a clear around that corner, and I can get the unit set up, and able to shoot cleanly down that tunnel, then it's potential to wipe out both the enemy Pavese that is down there, the enemy range, plus the enemy shields and fortressos that are covering that area is pretty good, I think. And that's where I think we can really help clear that out. And that's why I try and use these Falcos in that sort of more offensive capacity. But it's easier said than done. And having switched to the siege tower, it seems like there was more momentum back on the other one, so we go all the way back round. We haven't thankfully lost any of the unit, although one of them did take a little bit of damage from a few stray arrows. And it should be said that we have an absolutely fantastic team on this one. You'll see a few really, really good, amazing team plays here in a minute. And as we get set up, we have the unit of stalwarts, we have the team support, and these stalwarts do absolutely perfect job. They push forwards, they don't just engage, they push forwards, they set up and they tank the damage. And it gives me time to get on. Now you have to bear in mind I'm a bit of a crappy Falco player, so it takes me a little bit of time to get set up. And the unit doesn't auto-fire, I think it just glitches out on the archway, so I have to manually command them to start shooting. But a little bit later, we do get set up, and we start to pummel our first shots, and we wipe out 6 PVs in the opening shot. Free hero kill, and we start to clock up our damage. Now I'm trying to attract it in. But these Falcos attract enemy heroes like moths to a light. Look how many, we've got 2 suicides here. Here comes the 3rd and the 4th trying to get him. They just attract so many enemy heroes. Our team doing a really good job of trying to sort of control them and keep them off my unit. We actually managed to keep most of the unit alive at this point. But it's just amazing how many enemy heroes suicide to try and get these guys. We do unfortunately get a bit of a jab volley, but look at this teammate shields. Thank you so much, that guy. You know, really perfect setup. Moves his shields up just to block the enemy arrow fire and enemy javelin fire and keep my Falcos alive, keeps my damage in the fight. Which is so crucial because look how many kills we're racking up now, up to 60 kills already. But more importantly, it's really enabled us to clear out this top tunnel, and why this unit is so perfect for this sort of thing, because it clears out these hard points in a way that would actually be really difficult otherwise. So yeah, big thanks to that guy with his shield for putting his unit up and just blocking the damage against me. We get our 5th enemy hero trying to suicide against the unit. He manages to get a few of them before he gets knocked back down. Yeah, really, really surprising how many enemy heroes these guys attract. It's just kind of crazy. But I mean, I guess I'm the same. If I see a unit of them, I would go and charge and try and risk it. And we get the final enemy hero who hero balls over, and he does manage to get the last 3 of them, and he manages to escape. So he was the only one who managed to get away with it. But yeah, crazy how many enemy heroes these guys actually end up drawing to you. And that's one of the biggest drawbacks about these guys. And the thing you've got to be most careful about to try and protect them. So we've had a game now where we did really well about them. Let's see kind of some more of the drawbacks, or at least some of the issues I tend to have with them in most matches. So on Harbour City, we are defending, and we're down to the final point. This is a map I would say that suits Falco defence on the final point pretty well. It's got a very long straight all along this back which covers the final point. You can get pretty nicely set up. I can pretty much, well, not pretty much, I can outrange anything else in the game, and with the fact that the team spawns pretty much along this back row, you are relatively well protected. By no means guaranteed safe, you know, the enemy can cap that back supply and kind of push down the final point, particularly if they can get cav set up, but you're pretty safe. And you can see one of the initial problems with them for me is that they're pretty painfully slow, and the enemy don't necessarily always do what I want them to do. And because you lack that flexibility, I find it quite hard to position them sometimes, and this is why I think they work so well in Territory War in a way that they don't necessarily here. You know, in Territory War, the attacking team are making really decisive plays in very specific directions for very specific points. So you're pushing 15 people onto one point in one direction, and that really plays into the Falco's strengths of, you know, really focusing fire and trying to get that sort of area damage. I think that's where they work really well. But as for us, I think unless the enemy makes really decisive pushes, I think the Falco struggles a lot more, like here. You know, the enemy's making a bit of a push. And okay, you know, it's not that the unit isn't useful, but trying to hit small groups of enemies isn't really its strength. And you can see we're actually kind of struggling to really land any decisive shots here. We get a few hits on the enemy right at the back. You know, we hit some of those enemy tercios, and we hit a few of those paladins as they came round. But in this sort of situation, a unit of PVs is clearly the better unit. the Falcos really come to life when you start to get those huge groups of enemies that you can start to sort of exploit. And then I noticed they're starting to push that back supply point. Thinking, oh, okay, well, we better go down there. And I'm trying to think about positioning yet again. You know, you've either got to get close and play that danger game, a little bit like we did in the first match, but that really needs that very alert team, very good team support. So instead, I kind of try and angle myself a little bit at the back. In reality, actually, that cav charge pretty much wiped everything out, so there wasn't really a lot for me to really hit. But you see our actual accuracy was pretty much spot on. And we do get this monastic charge come down. And these Falco actually do pretty convincingly stop cavalry, particularly when you get a cannonball to go through pretty much the whole unit of the monastics. It actually does a lot of damage to the entire unit. I was momentarily concerned they were going to push on and get into the Falcos, but the shots start to get in, and actually they finish off the unit pretty much instantly once they get that close and they're able to land those shots. Although you've got to remember that Falcos do have a minimum range. I think it's 10 meters, although they will still area fire if you aim them at a specific area. They just won't auto-aim at targets that are right in front of them. So you do have to be a little bit careful to make sure the enemy don't get too close to your unit. So with us being now resupplied, I'm kind of coming back to see, are they making a significant pushback on A? But not really. They're sort of not really doing anything decisive, and this unit really lacks any of the flexibility. You know, if you look at our team, we're sort of skirmishing around the outsides. They're trying to take out some of the enemy before they can really get set up. And that's, you know, undoubtedly a really good thing to do. But something I can't really do, because this unit doesn't really play into that. And that kind of goes back, for me, to the earlier comment of, it kind of requires the enemy to play ball for this unit to work. Although it was quite satisfying, killing a few of those longbows, outranging the long-range unit, which is slightly ironic, but quite fun. So, you know, when the enemy does set up like that, along these long straights, particularly on defensive maps, I think they work well, but as I say, the enemy don't always do that. And a lot of the times on Harbour City, the enemy might make a really decisive push. And that would really play into my hands, because it gives me a long time, as we'll kind of see a little bit at the end, to get set up and just blast into them, you know, from distance, from the safety right at the back of the map. And it works really well. Kind of a similar situation here. Would have been a really easy one for me to get a lot of kills at, do a lot of damage from the safety, you know, this sort of distance. Almost all the cannonballs will hit. But by the time we actually get there and get into position, the enemy is pretty much already dead. We, you know, grab a few kills, but we really weren't exactly contributing much. We were really just grabbing a few kills, you know, so I feel like their usefulness in that situation is limited. And back to kind of the situation of the first one, no matter what you do, they attract enemy heroes. I mean, we all do it. If I see a unit of Falcos, I just go straight for them. And a lot of the time you'll find that unless you're really, really switched on and really good at kind of babysitting your Falcos, I find you do get killed by enemy heroes a lot. I've got plenty of footage of me dying to enemy heroes who just, before they even get set up, you know, because they manage to spot my Falcos, they just go for it, they suicide, they run past the enemy units, hop on, you know, maul swing through them, and they're all dead. So it doesn't really take very long. You've got to be really careful. And if you go for this as a unit, you will certainly have moments where they just get wiped out by a few enemy heroes. So again, still a little bit of a lull in the fighting, really. I'm pushing the unit up a bit further onto just back from the A point, mostly because we had a couple of stacks of PVs there. I thought it was a relatively safe location. We do start to fire at these few enemy heroes. I almost knocked them out of shooting mode because they don't have the suitable accuracy, as you can see here, to actually really hit an enemy hero in this sort of situation. Firing into a cluster, yeah, they're fine, but realistically trying to target small numbers of enemy units like this just isn't really very viable, because it's just not that accurate. Enemy gets a Scorpio set up, we start to open fire on that. I don't think we actually get the kill on it. I think one of our friendly units throws a grenade at it or something. But taking out artillery is one of this unit's strengths. They can target enemy artillery relatively effectively, and obviously one hit from a Falcon ball will take out a green Scorpio like that. We get a little bit of a berserker push going on from the back, but again, not really a sort of concentrated effort. But I'm feeling at this point that the main push must be coming soon. They've got 1 minute 20 left, and this is, you know, hopefully going to be our best opportunity to make use of the unit. We actually lose the back supply point. I don't know if I'd actually noticed that at the time. I probably had now. But with 1 minute left, it's not really worth going back there. I get the units set up nice and cleanly along the back, and then the enemy actually start to make a push. They don't push as hard as they would like, but it does give you a bit of an idea of why this unit is so dominant, with how many kills we can pick up, so quickly. They're starting to set up. We're already hitting their ranged backline, and they haven't even got their melee infantry around the corner yet. Because we can just throw in shots, because we outrange anything that they've got, and there's nothing they can do about that. And as you can see, as soon as the shots are standing in, they're just immediately getting kills, because the damage is just so insanely high. They just wipe everything out. Look how quickly we get kills. Just sort of grabbed 30-40 kills already, stacking up 50 kills, because it just keeps throwing shots in. Yeah, friendly team actually manages to get enough momentum. I think we've been waiting long enough that we all just wanted to fight. So we just basically charged in and flattened what's left. But it kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what the potential of this unit actually could be. And, if they put a really concerted push on that point, you could really rack up hundreds of kills remarkably quickly with that as a unit. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what these Falcos are like. Certainly an interesting unit. I think much more effective in territory war than standard siege, but in the right moment they can certainly be super, super effective in siege. It's just very easy to find yourself getting killed by enemy heroes. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for a lot more Conqueror's Blade content. Thanks for watching, guys. I shall see you all on the next one.